Hello and welcome to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Tuesday, December 12th. We are back. We got 5 games to go over. It's going to be a quick one. I think it's a fun little slate. We have some news already, but we are still waiting for a decent amount of news to come through. Now, before we get into it, come join us at LionStar. Look, we have 4 promo offers right down there. Thrive, Sleeper, Underdog, Chalkboard. All of which, if you use, you can get 1 month free of LionStar. Just make sure you go through our link and deposit the minimum amount. And then let us know that you did it through this form here. And we can set you up for your free month. All right, now let's get into it. Let's get into this slate a little bit and see how it all shakes out. All right, so as always, quick overview. We got Dallas and Lakers, and then Warriors, Suns, and Kings, Clippers as the higher totaled games. So a lot of the ownership is going to go there, but we still do have a lot of stuff to kind of shake through as far as what's going to happen with injuries, and that can definitely shake up the slate quite a bit. Now, let's get into who I like a little bit and some of the higher owned players. So starting on FanDuel, high owned Malik Monk, James Harden, Dante Exum. Look, I actually think Monk is very interesting. I am surprised to see him being so high owned. Just because the nature of him as a player. Yes, he does have a big ceiling, but his floor is pretty low, and he has to run into some extra minutes to really hit it, which he has been doing lately. 28 minutes, 32, 28, 26. So he's been hitting that. We have him projected for 27, which is probably pretty good, but just understand that he very well could have a 24, 18-minute game, something like that. And if he's having one of those, he is not going to be paying off what you want. But at 5,600, he absolutely has the ceiling that we want, and he has a decent medium projection. He's been producing very well at a fantasy per minute rate lately, and with his 27, 28 minutes, he looks awfully good in this matchup. So I understand why people are going there. I'll be going there as well. Next, we got James Harden. 34% owned. Harden's been actually pretty good lately. I really hated this trade for the Clippers just because I don't enjoy watching Harden too much, or the player he is. But you know what? They've been producing pretty well lately, and Harden is a big reason for that. They've won 5 of their last 6, so they are on a little bit of a roll. Now, this is a tough matchup. It is a higher pace spot for him, and for 80 or 8K, a guy that's reaching mid-40s, somewhat regularly right now, I think it's a very interesting situation. You could definitely go to him. Dante Exum, 6,100. 29, 40, 36. So the one thing I do need to bring up about this 36 last night and playing 35 minutes is I don't fully expect him to play 35 again. We did get some extra injury news yesterday that likely led him to play a couple more minutes. If Tim Hardaway's in, I would expect him to play, a minute or two less, probably more in that 30 to 33 range than 33 plus. And if he's going to get 33 plus, I like him a lot, but I just can't really expect that at this point with Tim Hardaway in. But, we'll wait and see how news shakes out today. I do like him, especially if we can go to, put him at like 33, 34 minutes, then I think he's nice. But there is some volatility in those minutes, so understand that when you're taking him. Now, some pivots here. Darius Garland. Garland absolutely crushed last night, and Evan Mobley being out for the Cavs is very similar to either Mitchell or Garland being out. The usage really goes up for Mitchell and Garland. And in this situation, Garland goes to more of a 1.15 minute player versus what he's been right around a fantasy point per minute for the season. So he becomes a much better producer fantasy-wise, and now he has a tough matchup. But at 7,900, I think you got to consider a guy that can get into that mid-40s at the fantasy rate scoring that he does. So I think he's interesting. Another guy, Kobe White. Look, the guy is just producing. He's playing an insane amount of minutes, though. So there is some worry that he played 45 minutes yesterday. But look, there's still no Zach LaVine, and the Bulls do play their guys a lot of minutes. So I would expect him to play a lot again tonight. And 7,300, for a guy that's in that upper 30s, low 40s range, but has 50-point ceiling is kind of nice. Don't mind going there, especially if he stays kind of lower owned like he is. So that's definitely a little bit of an interesting one to me. Now on to DraftKings, our high owned. We got Exum, Jaden Hardy, and Malik Monk. The one thing I got to say about Hardy is he played 34 minutes yesterday. If Tim Hardaway's in there, there's no way he's getting up to 34 minutes. So I think this play, more than Exum, depends on his health. Hardy is a pretty good fantasy producer, right about a minute fantasy point per minute spot. So if he is getting minutes, he's interesting. If Hardaway is in, I think the field probably moves off of him, as would I. Malik Monk, we went over already. Peyton Pritchard, I mean, he needs to get hot because he's not going to see extra minutes. 23, 24 minutes is likely his top, but at 3,800, I get it. Just a tough spot. All right. And matchup wise, Kobe White, best fantasy point per minute matchup. Garland is second. And understand, Garland also gets that boost from no Mobley. So that one's interesting. And I think De'Aaron Fox is pretty interesting. He's going low owned in a higher pace game. 9,600, been crushing it lately. He's definitely of interest to me. Now let's get over to shooting guard and try and make it quick. Malik Monk, Harden, and Eric Gordon. Gordon is an interesting one. There's no Grayson Allen, no Kevin Durant. So at 5,500, he's a guy that can get you into 30. My issue is that with Beal and Booker, I just don't think there's much of a ceiling for him. So to me, this is a play that, yeah, he can get you close to 5x or 6x, but I don't think he can do 7 or 8. And so his ceiling's very capped. I think he's a little bit more of a cash play than he is a GPP play. Paul George coming in fairly high owned as well, but look, he's been very, very good lately, along with Leonard and Harden. And I think all three of those guys are in play tonight. It's just the game environment versus the Kings is a decent one. Devin Booker, I think Booker's going overlooked. So no KD. Ball's going to be in his hands a little bit more. He's a guy that really can fill up the assists, rebounds. He obviously can score the ball. I think the offense just is absolutely going to run through him tonight. While Bradley Beal is good, he is not going to take the ball away from Booker like Kevin Durant would. So I like the spot for Booker. I will absolutely be going there. Do not mind 10.7K for a guy that can get into the 50s and, or 60s, 70-point ceiling. So I like his spot, and he's a nice pivot off on a little lower owned. And into shooting guard for DraftKings, Austin Reeves, Paul George, Jaden Hardy. Reeves is just a little too inexpensive on DK. The other thing is, I think we should talk a little Lakers here. Lakers are playing an extra game this season. LeBron James is an aging star, so he has been questionable. He's been banged up for a little bit. I wouldn't be that surprised if the Lakers decided to rest him today. And so if that happens, I would like all of the Lakers a little bit more. Now, that is me kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit. I have no idea what's going to happen, but at least we're going to know before lock on this one. But Reeves has been solid. The only issue that I have with him is, he's 6K, and the likelihood of him getting to the 40s is pretty slim. It is a guy that I don't mind getting to. I just don't absolutely love it. I think that at his price, there's probably a little more downside than upside. That is my issue. PG, we talked about. Harden, we talked about. Hardy, Monk, we talked about. So let's move on to the matchups here. Cam Reddish has a great matchup, but I mean, he's just not doing much as a starter. He comes in as a pretty much defensive player and tries to lock down, one of their better wing or guard players. And, while he's good defensively, he's not great for a fantasy scorer. You could use him as a value piece. He at least is getting the minutes, and at this point, there's not a lot of value that's getting minutes. So for that reason, I think he's slightly interesting. Outside of that, matchup-wise, there's nothing really that interesting. Small forward, we got Kawhi Leonard, Eric Gordon, and Paul George. Kind of went over all of them already, so let's go straight to some pivots. We got DeMar DeRozan. Look, he's at like a 1.2 fantasy per minute without Zach LaVine this year. I think he's interesting at only 8,400 and really feel like you got to go back to him. I think he likely gets back into the mid 40s fantasy point wise, and at 8,400 I'm fine to pay that price to get that output, especially when he does have a ceiling. Then he can get into the 50s sometimes. Not very often, but every now and then I don't mind going here. It's also because it's a lower total game, it's just not getting the love that it probably should. And, those are the pivots that I seem to be getting to today. Another spot, ugly one, Harrison Barnes. Look, he's only 4,600. He's pushing 30 fantasy points regularly. It's in a decent spot. Nobody's going there. He's also a guy that, forward where he can guard multiple positions. And that's the thing about the Clippers. You kind of need players that can guard multiple positions, like Barnes, like Keegan Murray, and a couple guys on the Kings. So I don't mind getting there versus him. He's been meh versus the Kings, but he's just been meh versus the Clippers. But he's really been mad versus everybody. He is at least a guy that we've seen in the past get into the 30s or 40s fantasy point wise on real good games. Now, not saying that he's going to have a ceiling game here, but I don't mind taking this value when really the slate doesn't have a ton. And low own value. That's an interesting part to it as well that I do like. All right, now getting over to small forward on DraftKings. Leonard, Exum, Reeves, we've gone over all of that, so we'll just straight move to the matchups. Porter, very good matchup. Jamal Murray is questionable. If Murray's out, Porter generally sees an extra minute or two just because they need a scoring upside. But Bulls have been letting small forwards kind of do some work, so I don't mind going to Porter. And that's a spot that I wouldn't mind doing some mini game correlations, because you got the Bulls on one side who have some value plays. Then on the Denver side, you have Jokic, you have Porter, you have a couple guys that can score a bunch of fantasy points. So don't mind that whatsoever. Strus is fine. He does get a bump up with no Evan Mobley. Eric Gordon, we talked about a little bit already. So let's talk about power forward here. So high owned guys, Leonard, Drew Eubanks, and Andrew Wiggins. Man, Andrew Wiggins. 5K Andrew Wiggins. Did not expect to see that this season. And he's just been playing bad. The one thing I will say about him is he does still have the upside, 240 points. So I would have some consideration of him. But you take those games out, and Eric Gordon's been playing better than him. Even Harrison Barnes, who's cheaper, has been playing better than Wiggins. So Chalk Wiggins isn't something I like tonight. Eubanks, look, I think this is just a situation of not having much value. So if, say, Nurkic gets in foul trouble or something like that, he's a great play, but likelihood 16, 17 minutes and doesn't really get much done. Upside is there, but things just have to fall right. And when he's high owned, I just don't, love that spot. Leonard, we talked about. Keita Bates Diop. Look, this is me thinking that he is probably going to be starting tonight. He's cheap. Give him 26, 27 minutes, and maybe he can do something without KD. I don't love the spot, but I'm at least intrigued by it. Enough to think about going there. Harrison Barnes, we just talked about. Aaron Gordon, similar to Michael Porter Jr. If Jamal Murray's out, he does get a boost. Don't mind going there. He's been in that 30-40s range all season long, and don't mind many correlation with Bulls teams. I don't love the spot for him, but I'm going to be getting to some of them. Porzingis is definitely the guy I'm getting to most on the Boston Celtics. One thing I got to say here is this game does look like it is a low-scoring game based on the two opponents in it. But without Evan Mobley, that Cavaliers D is way, way worse. So Mobley ranks 8th in defense efficiency if you take, kind of only starters or guys that are playing 28 minutes plus a game and then have played a minimum of 18 games. He ranks 8th in that list. So he's a very solid defensive player, and having him not there to protect the paint is a real big deal. And I think it's a bump up to Porzingis and a bump up to a lot of the players on that Boston Celtics team. So I think it's interesting, and I think that just makes the pace of this game a little bit quicker. The Cavs are going to have to score a little bit more. Boston is going to have a little bit easier time to score. So I think it's an interesting spot to attack there. Now, getting over to DraftKings, we got Leonard, AD, Yuta Watanabe. Look, he got 24 minutes last game, but his minutes have been few and far between. He's probably going to get some without KD tonight, but he just hasn't been producing at a very good rate as of late. When he was with Toronto, he was around 0.9 fantasy points per minute. So getting more minutes, maybe he gets there, but I just don't think he's going to get the minutes to really be secure. So the reason these guys are higher owned right now is just because there's not much value. And that's really why I like the Harrison Barnes play, is he gets you a little bit of value, but more secure minutes. And so I'm a little intrigued by going there. AD is in a very good spot. Another thing to kind of think about here is that Derek Lively is on the other side, who is also going a little high owned. But Lively gets in foul trouble a lot. Now he's going up against a guy like AD, who can definitely get guys to foul him. And I think AD makes a little bit more of an interesting play if he's getting to the foul line and also getting one of their better defenders and shot blockers out of the game due to fouls. So I think AD is a little bit interesting. I'm currently not getting to much of him, but if LeBron is out or somebody on that Lakers team is out, he definitely will look a little bit interesting. And matchup-wise, Green, Gordon, Tatum on the top. Once again, I noted that, Mobley is out. He plays power forward. He would likely be on Tatum a lot. So Tatum's definitely a little bit more interesting. Aaron Gordon, that game is a little interesting to me. It's only a 7.5 total. And if Chicago, who's at home, is able to push the pace a little bit, it could be a fairly interesting game. And the Nuggets just aren't as good away. And that's a big thing here, is if you look at, how they do away versus at home. Away, you're seeing bigger team totals by the opponent, more losses. I think last I looked, they were undefeated at home. They might have one loss now at home, but they're a way better team at home than away. So I do have, more interest in both sides of the game when Denver is away. Green is slightly interesting. Look, 40 points in 3 straight games, only 6,900. He can totally get you there in a game that could be fairly high scoring with 2 decent offenses. And this Warriors D hasn't been quite as good as it generally has been. All right, now getting to the center, Eubanks, Derek Lively, and Draymond are the 3 highest owned guys. Eubanks we went over. Lively I talked about a little bit, but I got to talk about him more. Guy has been very good lately. 1.16 fantasy points per minute over his last 5. 1 fantasy point per minute over his for the season. And he's playing some extra minutes now. So I think he's pretty interesting. If you look over his last 5, 30 minutes a game over, the season, he's more like 25 and a half. There's some upside there. He had this 60-point game. He has, 30-point upside, or he's hitting 30 points regularly and has shown 40, 60-point upside. So he's definitely interesting. The one thing I will say with him being higher owned is that he gets into foul trouble. He is still a young player. 3 fouls last game, 4 the game before that. 5 versus Houston. He gets in issues, and if that lowers his minutes that he's playing, it's going to be a tough spot for him. So he is playing AD, who can definitely make that happen. While I like him, I have some reservations at high ownership. Porzingis we went over, and that'll pretty much do it here at high ownership. Over to DK, AD, Lively, Metu. Metu one I don't get at all. He did play 23 minutes last game, but it's coming off, him barely playing. So I don't really like that spot. Just can't really forecast him to get minutes at this point. And matchup-wise, Zubac has great matchup. Looney and Vucevic. I don't mind going to Vucevic. One of the things here is when he gets minutes, he generally produces. And versus a guy like Jokic, I would expect him to get some minutes. We have seen, 50-point upside from him versus Jokic in the past. I don't mind trying to go back to that. It is a little scary. I do think there's just other spots that look better for the Bulls, but don't absolutely hate it. So, all right, guys, that will do it for us today. Quick rundown of the 5 games. I will be back tomorrow. Have a good one. Adios. Good luck. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Bye.